Hi, everybody, and happy snow day. As you can see behind me, we did get some snow. Up here, I'm in southern Connecticut, so I don't know how much snow you're getting in the city, but there's certainly snow. And as you know, the university has announced a remote day, which means that all classes and activities are now happening online. Each professor should contact you and let you know exactly what the arrangement is for the specific classes. In our class, I posted a message. There's a few things that you need to do today. If you do them all very diligently, it shouldn't take you more than 30 to 45 minutes to complete. So I suggest you do it during the class time because that time block should have been open and available for you. But if not, obviously there's some leeway, some things that you can be flexible about. What I need you to do are mainly two things. The first one is this mini lecture that is here in this video. You need to watch it, review it, take notes, make sure that you understand it, because on Thursday in class we will have a quiz, a short quiz about this material. This material will also appear in the exam, and I will not cover all of it again in class, so make sure to pay attention. The other thing is that, as you know, we have our news coverage discussions in the class, and I would like to keep that on. We have two students registered for today, Ashley and Ahmad. So what I ask you to do, Ashley and Ahmad, there is a discussion forum on the discussion board open for you. You need for to post a news story and say something about it, a commentary, a question. What do you think? The same thing that you would do in class. And then the rest of you are welcome to chime in, ask questions, voice your opinion, etc. Uh, Ashley and Ahmad, I ask that you post by 2 p.m. today so everybody else can continue the work. And this counts towards everybody's class participation grade. So especially for those of you who haven't been very vocal participating in class, this is a great way to become involved. On that same discussion forum, there will be also two other threads open. There's a thread for Ahmad, a thread for Ashley, and two other open discussions for other students that would like to share a news story that is different than what Ashley and Ahmad had posted. And we can have the same kind of discussion there. Those two are first come, first serve. So if you really feel that you want to discuss something, I suggest you be one of the first to take those spots. All right, so that's what I am expecting of you. And also, if you are happen to be residing or voting in the third district, there is special elections today. So if you haven't yet in early voting, please go vote. Otherwise, stay safe, and I'll see you Thursday in class. So into our mini lecture, we have been talking about political ideologies. We talk about what they are, and we started to cover the different ideologies. We started to talk about liberalism, and I said that at the core assumption of all liberalism and liberalism leaning theories, the core assumption is that individuals should be able to develop to their best capacity and the fullest. And because of that, we need things like free speech so everybody can speak up, everybody can have an opinion. We need not a lot of government regulation because if what I want to do falls within something that the government restricts, I can't do it. So the less regulations there are, the better chance there is for everybody to become productive and effective in their community. And we are supporting democracy. That is at the bottom foundation of liberalism. Now, if you think about it, these kind of assumptions, of underlying assumptions, that's the core ideology in the United States. So Democrats, Republicans, American conservatives, American liberals, at the end of the day, most of us, or all of us pretty much, believe in those foundations. We interpret differently how to do that, but we do believe that that's what is at the foundation of good governance. So we take from that point, when we think about US politics, about American ideologies, we can talk about American liberalism and American conservatism, which are a variant of capital L liberalism. So American liberalism generally support the underdog, the minorities, the weak, those who need government help, or those who need a help, not necessarily government help. So thinking about things like economic equality, care for different minority groups, if it's by gender, sex, ethnic, racial, any type of a minority group will get attention from American liberalism. We have very, very strong support for freedom of expression in American liberalism, and that you can see that in the American left extremely strong because of that idea that if we don't safeguard freedom of expression, minorities will be shut down, will be quieted, will not be able to speak up. So it's not enough to have a law that says we have freedom of expression. We need to practice it. We need to safeguard it. That is um, probably the most important part of democracy under American liberalism. And with our technological advancement and things that happen around us, around the world in recent years, American liberalism tend to think about environmentalism and this idea that in order for people to develop to their fullest, we need a good environment. We need an environment, and this is ecological, weather, climate, right? If there are extreme snowstorms every day and you cannot go to school, you won't be able to study, you won't be able to advance yourself, right? So that is the idea that we need to safeguard safeguard our environment so we can fulfill our personality and what we want to do in life the best. On the other hand, there is American conservatism, and here the focus is not so much about the underdog and taking care of them, but on self-reliance. So that trait, American conservatism, and you will identify that with a lot with the Republican Party, talks a lot about keeping government regulations to a minimum. Small government. We don't want big government programs if you believe in conservatism in the United States. You want to be able to own a gun because if you need to protect yourself from the government, even, you need to have this possibility. You want to, consumers should have as much choice as possible, right? If I want to consume 3 liters of diet soda every day, that's on me. Maybe I read a research that say that that's the best way to live my life, and I believe in that, but that's on me. The government shouldn't come in and say no. Same thing, with smoking, with drinking, with all of those different things. Although there is a caveat on those items, which we'll get to in a minute. And also businesses. This is the American dream. You work hard, you put the effort where it needs to be, and you are advancing your own entrepreneurship. Small businesses should be given a lot of freedom to do whatever they want. Meaning that we don't need, if you are a true or pure or an extreme conservative, you don't want any kind of government regulation. You don't want environmental regulation. You don't want labor regulation. You don't want, a minimum wage. You don't want EPA restrictions. You don't want somebody to tell you how to do what you are doing. The other thing that comes with American conservatism is morality and spirituality. Okay, and this is where things like, uh, smoking, drinking, drug use, all of that, American conservatives tend to want to regulate those things because they believe that that's impacting, those are external stimuli that impact a person's ability to best fulfill themselves. And this is where we don't want that as part of our government. And they also believe in gender roles, in other social roles. And because of that, they are willing to have laws that restrict, for example, abortion or uh, the fact that you are that there are specific hours where bars or liquor stores should be open, etc. The other thing that comes with that is very high emphasis on spirituality or religiosity. So that comes with, yes, separation of state and church. However, religious institutions have a lot more rights and leeway than any other type of business or non-business entities. This is where a lot of times, if we have a rule that, for example, on on reproductive rights, right? Under the Affordable Care Act, the Obamacare, employees must cover um, the pills or any other birth control measures to their employees. But there's an exception for churches and other religious institutions if it is in conflict with their um, principles and values. So you see that even though we are sometimes have rules and some restrictions on businesses, on employers, etc., we do tend to, in the United States, give exemption to religious institutions. And that comes from this conservative, um, very, very strong conservative approach, social conservative approach. One other thing that you can see about that is that in the United States, if you are running for office, you often will identify yourself with what religion you are. Now, we are more or less open, and different types of Christians, or in some places, other people, people of other faiths, can run and win office. However, the group that gets the most criticism are those who don't believe in any religion, atheists. Those tend to have less traction in American politics because at the core, we are a society that value religiosity a lot. Now, obviously, all of those things are generalizations, and you can be a conservative that is fine with an atheist candidate that check all of the other boxes. So just understand that it's not that if I think that I or identify myself as a conservative, then by definition, if somebody is an atheist, I won't vote for them. Sure, I can vote for them. This is still free, a free country, and I am free to vote to whomever I want. All right. Now, as you know, and if you start to think about examples and different leaders, and even your own opinion, you will see that in the American context, conservatism and liberalism is very, very messy. And there's a lot of overlapping and self-conflicting features. So, like I said, you can be a very strong Catholic who is actually identify themselves as a strong liberal and doesn't believe in the social conservatism, for example. So you're not checking all the boxes, and there's a lot of overlap and messiness. Now, the problem is with our political system, the winner takes all districts. So, like we explained in class, if a candidate win 49% of the vote and somebody else wins 51% of the vote, the person who won 51% of the vote gets 100% support. So we don't have proportional representation. It's a winner takes it all kind of system. And because of that, that tends to squeeze the camps into those ideological boxes and then into party boxes, Democrats and Republicans, which add more messiness because there's a lot of Democrats or people who would vote Democrat but are actually identifying a little bit conservative or as conservative on some areas and vice versa. And if you look at the very, very extreme of the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, or the very extreme of the liberal conservative continuum in the United States, you'll see a lot of overlap. If you listen to speeches by Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump in the run up to the 2016 elections, you'll hear a lot of overlapping points, a lot of things that they actually agree about. Now, we do have things like that's called issue migration, and the party ID is above ideology. So sometimes the Democrats own an issue, say um, immigrants right now, right? Illegal immigrations. Where will be the focus? Is it on the human rights of the immigrants? So the issue is owned by the Democrats, or will it be on border security and law and order, where the issue will be kind of quote unquote owned by the Republicans? So we see a lot of those examples where issues migrate between parties, and they're actually the party ID takes over the ideology. So when you come on election day to vote for somebody, you may vote on your party ID. I want to support the Republican Party, as opposed to go topic by topic and think with yourself, is that person in the same line with what I think or not? So that's why you see a lot of times that parties try to own, quote unquote, own, because both Democrats and Republicans deal with immigration and illegal immigration. But whoever's got the strongest message or the most popular message would win the day. In this case, probably in our upcoming presidential elections. But those ideologies are still organizing principles, and we could see, with issue migration and everything else, you could see, Republican tend to skew conservative, and Democrat tend to skew liberal. And as some issues like the illegal immigration right now become very strong and emotional for a lot of people, the divide is intensifying. The camps are drawn much stronger. People stop listening to each other, start to scream at each other. If you're Donald Trump, you're calling names, etc., etc. So we see that, even though, like I said, ideologically, there are a lot more overlapping points, when we translate it into the political institutional theater, we tend to see a lot more divide here. Now, I asked you, and you don't have to do it, but if you can log into the political campus and test yourself, that would actually give you a lot of interesting information, and it will be great to share that in class later on. Okay, a few more points about liberalism and conservatism and other theories in the general, um, in outside of the American experience. Right? Okay, so we said that already. That liberalism believe that there's a strong reliance on the individual and the ability to develop in many different ways. John Stuart Mill said, the chief end of politics is to allow people to become responsible and mature. This is the idea. We need to build a government that provides the person with all the freedom, space, and tools to be who she wants to be or who she can be. Okay, so intellectual freedom, right? Intellectual freedom are very, very important. This idea here in the university, right? I have academic freedom. I can study and say whatever I want in class, and you cannot sue me about that. You may feel uncomfortable in my class, that's something else, but I could do that because of academic freedom. This idea that we should be able to think and say and argue any and every position with the limitation and caveat that we are not advocating to kill others, or we are not advocating for people to take weapons and hurt others, right? So in liberalism, government should be small and minimal, because if we want to give a person the most freedom and the most space and all of those things, we don't need a big government. We don't need a lot of rules. We don't need a lot of agencies and agents doing things. Economic activity is key and important, and to have um, we have to have a system that allowed people social mobility. We talked about that in class. This idea that if I work hard and I maybe get lucky and other things, I could climb up the social strata. I can be born to a poor family and end up a 35-year-old billionaire, if I arguably if I just do the right things, or if I just allow myself to fully uh, develop. So we are promoting social mobility, and therefore we are breaking the ties of domination. There's no more of that, arguably, that there are things or jobs that women can do, or black people can do, or Hispanics can do. All of those ties of dominations, of power structures that in some societies have been entrenched for many, many years, all of that should go away, and we allow people to develop themselves. And if you're good in what you do, you'll get far, right? So in the United States, if you think about party ID, or like more of the political ID in the United States, libertarians are probably the closest to a pure or more classical liberal. Now, the more classical conservative, that actually is an ideology that evolved as a reaction to liberalism. And here the focus in not in the US experience, but in Europe, in other places, the focus is on the community. And this is where we are looking for structure and order, law and order, right? You remember those messages, this idea that there should be rules. Those rules are very much reliant on religion and morality, and those rules should always be respected. So people are part of the community. You don't just, yes, you are individuals that have freedom, but you still live in a community, and you have a role that they need to fulfill in the community. So it's not in conservatism. We are walking away from it's all about the individual and starting to think about the community. And later on, if you swing all the way to fascism, which we'll highlight in a few minutes, you are thinking about the state. So you're serving the state. Okay, power relations, according to conservatives, are something good, because when I have power over you, I have a responsibility to lead you and to make sure that you are getting to where you are supposed to be. And this is where the European welfare state and also church givings and a lot of that, charity giving comes on with conservatism. You need to help the weak, but not the government, not through somebody making a law and making things, making people reliant on the government, but because people want to have a strong operational community, they will work. Um, they will work to help others, right? And if you think about it, a lot of the grassroots efforts that we have lately, such as the GoFundMe, God forbid somebody's house was burned, the community does a GoFundMe. Nobody told us to do that. The government doesn't have a rule that we have to contribute money, but we want everybody in our community to have good life. So we help them, right? Now, in conservatism or pure conservatism, this idea of social mobility is not really pushed or advanced because change is suspected. They're good with the status quo. We don't want change. We don't want, new ideas, new groups coming in. This is why a lot of heavily conservative societies tend to have things like xenophobia, so not accepting foreigners. Maybe if it's a country, have very strict immigration laws and not letting people in. Um, we're not, living and breathing change. It's a conservative, right? It's conservative, status quo oriented ideology, and that was very, very strong in post-World War II, Europe, and the rest of the developing world. I want to have a few minutes to talk about socialism, which I would say is probably heavily misunderstood in the United States context. Now, this is evolving, I guess, if you think historically, it's evolved within the liberal movement and was pushed by labor organizations. And this idea is that, yes, we need to think about individual freedoms, but the government needs to help. Individuals without the help of government can only go so far. We have a number of glass ceilings. This idea, for example, that we never had a woman president. There's some people who question, can we? Or is there a glass ceiling that we as a society will only accept women in up to vice president, for example? And that's true for every group, minority, every group that has ever been discriminated against. There are the point is that government should help us break those glass ceilings. Government should have rules to allow individuals to flourish in their freedom. Now, at its fullest, socialism is about public ownership of the means of production, which means what it sounds. Socialism means that the government owns businesses and industries, owns them, right? And because of that, the government is the largest employer in the country. Um, and free economic activity is not really what we are aiming for, but a very planned and organized economic system that is controlled and run by the government. So the government, under such circumstances, and again, practiced to its fullest, can supply things like full employment. Because if the government is the employer, we don't have market forces. The government can always hire somebody else. Marxism also falls within this category of socialism, and Marxism, in a nutshell, and this is a real quick nutshell, we can talk about it a little bit more in class. Marxism believes that society is organized by classes, and the working class is the lowest and also the newest because Marxism was developed during the Industrial Revolution, where the working class just became a class. Uh, but even though it's the lowest, it should be given a role because it is the one that kind of holds the foundation of the economy. And if we allow business owners to dominate and keep down the labor and the workers, not give them rights, no minimum wage, people can be slaves even or work in horrible conditions, etc., etc. At some point, people will revolt. And Marxism actually celebrates that. Now, how does it look like in the real world, right? So Marxism is a theory that if you look into it has a lot of things that from my experience as a professor here, a lot of people might agree with. However, it evolved into communism, and communism is a much more militant kind of wing of socialism. It is everything is owned by the government. People have zero um, private property. So housing, for example, is owned by the government. There are no homeless people. There were no homeless people in the Soviet Union because the government owned all the housing and made sure that everybody had a roof over their head. However, that roof was whatever they decided you are to have. So you can choose if I want to live in an apartment or a house, if I want to live in the country or the city, etc. Somebody else decides that for you. And that's true for everything else, including food rationing or choices in the supermarket, even when things were a little bit more free. So that communism that took it to the extreme, and this is what we have, most of us have in mind when we think about socialism. Right now, if you look at countries like North Korea, they practice socialism. Um, Cuba to some degree. There are others, but none of them. Vietnam. None of those countries will be countries that you would look at as a model of economic or otherwise success. But there's something else. In Western Europe, socialism evolved into social democracy. And social democracy is something else. Social democracy talks about high quality government services while providing the market the freedom um, to operate. So in countries like Sweden and Denmark and Norway and Germany, uh, and to a lesser extent, the Netherlands and Belgium, etc., you have private entrepreneurs, you have private ownership of your house, of other things. Um, you can own a business, you can become richer than others. However, there are very, very strong social services provided from government. For example, education is from infants, from daycare, all the way to higher education. Everything is free and provided by the government. Healthcare, cradle to grave, everything you need is provided by the government. And there are many, many more examples. A lot of us, women look at the European experience of mothers, maternity leave, for example. It's actually parental leave, it's not maternity leave. And in some countries, it is as long as a year or 2 years and can be shared between the two parents. The mom who might went through labor right now will be the first one to take 4 weeks off, but then the dad will. And the government sustains it. The government pays for that with the argument that that would allow people to safely invest themselves, innovate, run businesses. The market is a free market. There are still forces, market forces in operation. So some people say, well, how does that work? Why can't we have it here? The key is one word, taxes. In Western Europe, people pay very, very high taxes, especially those who make more. So redistribution is key in social democracies. And when I say high taxes, 60, 70% of what you earn. But think about it. You don't have to take care of so many things. And also there is this understanding that we should have less inequality in a community. So we have people that are richer and people that are less rich, but we don't have the extreme. We don't have the extreme poor and we don't have the extreme rich. So if you live in Sweden, you could be a millionaire, but not a multi-billionaire. And you could be a working class person who just makes do, but you are not going to be a homeless, poor person that cannot feed their kids either. So we are compressing with government services, we are compressing those social strata, but there still are. And there is a lot of social mobility. So that is socialism. And fascism, lastly, fascism takes conservatism um, to its extreme. It's actually a very thin theory because it is, by definition, rejecting individuals. A fascist leader doesn't want very strong universities and highly educated um, community underneath them. Instead, they want people to adore them and to follow them and see them as the charismatic leaders that they are. It's the idea of the cult of one. They reject existing institutions. So parties, all the parties are wrong. I am the only one who is right. Religious institutions, social institutions, schools, education, books. Books are not important, and in fact, we need to limit some of them because we don't want people to think. We don't want people to be able. This is as far away from liberalism as you can get. You don't want people to be able to become their own person. You want them to be pretty much servants of the state and the leader. So very, very strong message of nationalism um, and this idea that I know what to do. All you have to do is believe in me, give me power, and I will take you where we should go. There's a lot of propaganda, lies, and in the extreme, there's also restrictions, very strong restrictions on freedom of speech, right? If we think about Italy's Mussolini, the Spanish experience, even Nazi Germany had some traits of fascism. This idea that there shouldn't be freedom of speech. Not everybody are equal. Not everybody are human the same way. And we, as an international community, arguably defeated that trait or that way of thinking after World War II, but you still have movements and you still have, from time to time, leaders in different places, even strong democracies, raise some fascist traits. And there are people that currently, right now, see kind of a wave of fascism taking over the world. So that's something to be aware of and think about. All right. So that was my talk, my mini lecture, which went a little bit over what I wanted, but still a lot of good information here about um, the different political ideologies. So make sure that you know this material and are ready for class on Thursday. And I'm looking forward to see your discussions on the discussion board about the news stories. Have a good day, everybody.